maybe it's time that we met Walt's father. And so, with your allowance, I would like to give you a little reading of a scene between Walt and his father here on page 189, if you're okay with that. I'm not going to read the whole book because I think you could read that at home. But hopefully you'll enjoy this. Here we go. Wait, one page. Flipping too fast here. Hold on. There we go. What are you reading, son? I lowered my book and looked at him. The Outlaw Trail, the history of Butch Cassidy. He threw out another graceful cast, one that seemed to me any trout in a 10-mile length of the middle fork of the Powder River would have been happy to lay into, even this early in the season. The Charles Kelly book? Yes, sir. He nodded, his gray eyes following the fly as it drifted near the opposite bank on a cool March morning with the melting snow wetter than a well, the hanging droplets clinging to the other side of the bushes. Good book. He wrote it when there were still people around who knew the Wild Bunch, primary research material being the best. Yes, sir. Is that my signed first edition? Yes, sir. Giving up the cast, he stripped the 5-weight line in and prepared to present it to another finicky fish. You'll make sure to keep it dry and that it gets returned to my study undamaged? Yes, sir. Watching the ripples that swept under the skim ice of the water where the sun reflected like a jewel case, I kept wondering, why are we here? I guess because it was uncommonly warm for the time of year, and my father had gotten one of his wild hares and decided that we should go fishing. We tromped through the snow and broke a trail down to the river where he stood and I sat, having scraped the snow from a boulder. He flicked the rod tip forward, but just as he did, the wind came up and carried the gray hackle peacock into the bushes on the other side. March in Wyoming is a useless month, where all you can do is wish the wind would stop blowing. He yanked, but the fly stayed stuck. Little wonder to me that Sparina, the Harrisburgs, warned Caesar the Ides of March. He yanked again, but this time the leader broke, and the gossamer line fell into the water without the lure. Damn. He pulled another fly from the small wool patch on his vest, and I asked about the outlaw. He never killed anybody. Butch Cassidy? Sliding his glasses onto his nose, he slipped the leader tippet through the eye of the fresh fly and expertly tied a cinch knot, clipping the tag end with a small tool that hung from his vest. No, and he said he never robbed an individual, just banks and railroads that he said had been robbing people for years. I watched as my father flipped his arm back to a 10 o'clock position, the line looping out behind him and then suddenly forward, sending his hand-tied fly across the stream and under a large bush that hung over the fast-moving water. But he robbed banks, and banks are where people keep their money. I guess he never thought of it that way. He adjusted, playing it a little and then mending the line, keeping the arc upstream. Anyway, he went to jail for that, but at his parole hearing, he promised the judge that he'd never rob another bank in Wyoming. Did he? No, he went and robbed banks in Utah and Nevada. So I guess he was a man of his word of sorts. I glanced around the canyon. And they used to be here? My father nodded his head upstream. One of their hideouts, a cave, was over there, or something to say. Can we go see it? He turned towards me. I thought we were here to fish. We are, but, well, maybe after we catch a few. We come back to camp empty-handed, and that mother of yours is going to think that we were down here taking a nap. Yes, sir. Dutifully placing his book in my rucksack, I picked up my rod and pulling a few yards of line from my own reel, draping it out into the water, and then flipping it forward, rolling the line out about a yard from his. Poacher. Our lines danced to the right in the vibrant water. You think they were bad men? He thought about it as he stripped his line in. Well, it's debatable as to whether Butch killed anybody, but at least 3 of the others most certainly did. Feeling a tug on my line, I lifted and watched as a 12-inch brown trout arched and spit my fly back at me. I've told you, don't pull up on the hook, go sideways and preferably upstream so the current does some of your work for you. I moved past him and redirected my cast. He had pulled his own line in and then threw it, and I watched as the gentle loop played out on the surface of the water. Excuse me. And an even larger brown snapped up the fly, my father steadily hauling him in. I watched as he netted the fish, carefully taking it and slapping its head against a nearby boulder before flipping open his fillet knife, cleaning him out, and placing him in the dampened moss in his willow cream. But Butch and Sundance never killed anybody. He He stood, towering over me. That's the story. So maybe they weren't such bad guys. Maybe they just rejected the rules of society and wanted to make up their own game. His voice took on a different tone. They were thieves, Walter. They took things that didn't belong to them, intimidating and harassing people all over the country. The amount of effort that they put into stealing and hiding, think what they could have accomplished if they turned their efforts towards an honest life. Gunned down at 40 years of age, they were men of low character. And they all met bad ends. Quietly stripping in my line, I waited, and then watched as he moved up the bank. He turned to look back at me. There's a tendency in our society to romanticize the exploits of outlaws and gangsters, an insistence that they're Robin Hood-type characters, that they have more in common with us than the people who we hire to protect us and enforce our laws. I don't buy that. I think that when you pick up a gun and use it to take things away from people, it doesn't matter how clever or charming or handsome you are, you're just a thief. Plain and simple. I nodded. He studied me for what seemed like a long while. Want to go look at that cave? Yes, sir. He started off as I secured my line and stumbled after him with a hidden smile. So, how do you get low character anyway? He called back over his shoulder. By not listening to your father.